Welcome to InnerSight, Health Optimization with Rudy and Sean.
Hey, Sean, here we go. Podcast for the InnerSight. I've lost track of numbers, but we will get back to the numbers soon. But for us, we are touching a big subject. We're going to try and cram in as much as we can, but it's something that we all have to do every day, a few times a day, and that is fuel yourself with a diet.
Yes, I must say, I think I'm going to learn a lot today. This is one of my weak spots in medicine because we don't get, I think we had 1 or 2 lectures in med school about diet, and the things we know is what we learn from each other. But today we've got the expert here, so that's going to help us a lot.
I'll try.
First of all, thank you. It's a long weekend, Thursday afternoon. Most people are already on their way somewhere for the weekend. We appreciate it. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Just to introduce Helanie van Rooyen. She's a sports dietitian, so she's qualified in South Africa, and then has done quite a bit of international studies and worked in Canada as a sports dietitian. And we don't have a lot of them around in South Africa. I, myself, and my family has also walked a journey with you, so thank you for that. And it's going to be interesting. So we are very happy to have you here.
I'm glad.
Let's start and say, okay, Helanie, we've got someone, we tested them at InnerSight, and we realized that they either feeding too much or too little. So, because for sports science, there is probably more too little than too much. But where do you start? How do you look at someone as a start, dietitian wise? What do you want to know?
Well, for me, as a sports dietitian, obviously, I want to know what kind of sport you do and what your training schedule looks like, what your week looks like, when you train in the day, what you do every day, how many hours do you spend training, and then obviously what you eat, what you supplement with, what kind of multivitamins you use, what medications you use, if you are using any alcohol. So that's usually what we do in the initial assessment. And then we will weigh you and get like a good weight history, where you were, where you are, where you feel comfortable, where you want to be when you do reach like your goal. Wat wil ek nou sê?
Your sport performance.
Yeah, your goal, or your big, like if you're gonna do the Cape Epic or the Ironman, when is it? When do you want to peak? When your biggest training load will be? And usually I will contact the coaches as well if I feel necessary to hear what their plans are with their clients, just to match the feeling up with the coach's plan. And I think that's usually a good place to start.
I suppose that's quite important because most coaches will take their clients through blocks of training, and sometimes it's less training and sometimes there's more training in a certain period of time, and you want to preemptive feed more in certain parts of the training. So
Exactly.
I think that communication must be very important.
It is. And also, if you do want to lose weight, we don't necessarily want to do it in a building phase. We usually do that in your base phase, where the training quality isn't as high as when you are in your building phase. So then the nutrition plan will look differently.
So let's start just at that point of weight.
Yes.
Because obviously we're talking about calories in, calories out, and it depends, we're not going to go into the detail because all calories are not the same, but in a very simple way. So you need to know, first of all, calories. What's calories to start off with? And how do you know if you actually taking too much or too little?
Well, that we usually do by doing the in-body assessment, which you guys also always do, to see where the fat percentage falls, how much muscle there is, and obviously if the client is overweight or underweight, or just at their set weight where they want to be. And from there, we will use different nutritional calculations to see and use activity factors. For me, I like to give my clients different meal plans because your energy needs is not the same every day. You can't eat the same for a rest day as on the weekend when you're cycling 8 hours a day. It's not going to work. So I will usually do like a race day meal plan and then an intermediate day meal plan and then also your hard day meal plans, which usually balances out throughout the week. So you will rest and recover well on your race days nutritionally, but you will also be fueled up on the days that you need it the most. So that's usually where I start. And then at the follow-up, we will see what happened and clients will give feedback about what worked, what didn't, how their stomachs felt, because a lot of times people aren't used to exactly eating the correct things and the correct amounts during training sessions. So that's also a big issue that we run into in the beginning. But over time, it does get better. And I think Rudy can definitely
attest to that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the things you see on the little clips on the social media these days about the big 120 grams of
Yes.
carbs and all that. So is it such a big issue? Like where do you think people underfuel when they train, or do we need 120? And what does it look like? What does that amount of carbs look like?
Well, I don't think everyone can reach the 120 grams per hour. You will have to train your gut excessively for that, and it is going to take a while. And we just spoke about this, how the Tour de France guys do use about 120 grams per hour of cycling, but that will also depend on how hard your activity is that you
Effort,
are
yeah.
that you are taking part in. But from my experience, most people, the recreational athlete, does well between 45 to 70 grams per hour. Their gut can manage it quite comfortably without getting bloated. But then with when you come to stage races and stuff, people do tend to struggle with bloating. So that's why training the gut and using your weekend training cycles as dress rehearsals for your competition day. So I will usually start at a lower range, say, okay, you are just so there's different ranges of carbohydrate intake, right? So when you train less than an hour and you have eaten well during the day, you don't necessarily need any carbohydrates during that first hour of training.
Even with high intensity.
Well, yes.
Yeah,
Say you
okay.
had lunch and it's only like an hour or so after that you're doing your high intensity training. Yes, but most people don't feel well during the day. So I will always tell my clients, just take a bottle of carb drink with you for those sessions to make sure, especially during like those high intensity interval training sessions, your body is more reliant on carbohydrates during those sessions. If it's just an easy 60-minute running, cycling, swimming, you can drink water. It's fine. But then as soon as you go over to the 2-hour mark, 3-hour mark, you can be anywhere between like 30 and 90 grams of carbohydrates. And over 3 hours, we do want you to be at 90 grams plus carbs per hour. So what this looks like is if you're just taking glucose, your body can uptake whatever, transport 1 grams of glucose per minute, right? So if you're going to go up to 2 grams per hour, it's not going to work. You might have some gut discomfort. But that's why they did some research and they added fructose to the mix. So that uses a different gut transporter, your SGLT5. And those do actually increase the transport and helped take the glucose to your muscles where it's needed during competition.
And that's that ratio that you see 1 to 2.
Yes.
How does that work? Because I mean, you some people say, but you need a 1 to 2 mix or 1 to 1.
2 to 1.
Yeah, 2 to 1.
Yes.
I've seen it, but I mean,
Yeah.
like Sean said, it is pretty much Greek to me. Even though I do stage races and I have done the epic,
Yeah.
I've got no idea what that
Yeah.
means.
So they started with the only glucose and they found that, okay, 60 grams per hour is great. And then they added the glucose to it and they actually got people to increase it up to 3 grams per minute. So that's like 180 grams per hour. The study also says don't try this at home. So
I can imagine.
I think there was some vomiting and stuff related to that. But the thing is, if your ratios aren't quite right, so there's a lot of residual glucose that stays over in the gut. And we all knows what happens if there's residual glucose in your gut. You bloat and you get diarrhea and you're nauseous and you vomit. So no one wants that. I mean,
Especially not in a race.
yes, but we've all seen those poor people in races that it happens to. But the 2-to-1 ratio is usually glucose to fructose mixes that they do. And then they say if you're gonna go up to 90 grams per hour, the 2-to-1 glucose fructose ratio is what you want. But if you're going longer and you're gonna ingest more than that, I think 1 to 0.8 ratio glucose to fructose is a better option. Then you can actually increase it up to like 110 grams per hour easily without too much gut discomfort. But again, training the gut is key, because what happens during exercise, as you know, a lot of the blood in your gut goes to your muscles. So there's not much happening in the gut digestion-wise. So I always teach this, because when people come and sit there in front of me and tell me, no, but I eat peanuts and dribbles and biltong, then I have to calm down a little bit. Because why? Fat takes twice as long as glucose to digest, right? So you actually want to take in all your easily digestible carbohydrates during training and competition. Fructose isn't necessarily easily digestible because it is a low GI carbohydrate, but it does help to, carry more glucose to the body. And I also think that's why a lot of people, especially IBS sufferers, also tend to bloat a bit more on some carbohydrate mixes. It's because of the high fructose intake. So there's also that.
So training your stomach to get used to these carbo loads is, in general, how long does it take? Or is it so individualized?
I think it's individualized. But if you think of people that does eating competitions, right, they literally sit down and eat more and more and more of, maybe, say it's like a hot dog eating competition. They will train their bodies to sit down and eat as much hot dogs as they want in a specific time, because that expands the stomach. It helps your body to digest. Our bodies it's so smart. Like, we can train our bodies to do anything, right? So training the gut will teach your body to digest a larger, like, residual volume of fluids, maybe. So teaching your body to be okay when there's bumps on your body, to actually teach your body to digest the meals and the carbohydrates while you're busy cycling or running. And to also teach yourself to actually eat while you are training, because I think for a lot of people, that's a difficult thing to do. I remember my husband, when we started cycling, we had to stop every time when he wanted to eat something, because it was difficult for him to drink and eat on the bike, because he didn't grow up riding bicycles. So, I mean, that's also part of training yourself to eat while you ride. And then also to simulate your race nutrition plan. And that's very important, to make sure, okay, this is the mix that's maybe at the race that I'm going to partake in, or this is the mix that I'm going to take with, which a lot of times becomes difficult, because you can't necessarily take with, say it's a 7 or 8 hour stage race, take with all your mixes in your bags, with all your gels and bananas and Marmite sandwiches. Like, it becomes heavy. So teaching your body to actually become used to that race mix or gels or whatever they're going to have available at the race that you're going to do. So those are all things that you can do to train your gut, and then incrementally increasing the carbs that you want to reach in the end, to get your body used to that as well.
So what you're trying to say is the person that sends you a message on a Thursday afternoon going to a stage race and say, what do you guys use for fueling, is the wrong way.
Yes.
So maybe at least 2 months?
Yeah, they say like 21 days.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will say 2 months would be a good time. But don't try anything new on race day. We all know that. We've all tried it and we've all failed.
I'm gonna step off the athletes a little bit to bring a little bit of our other, or maybe before I do that, I've got one more question.
Okay.
How do you know if you're underfueling?
I think so we've had this red S discussion, and we first many years ago in the 90s we had the female athlete triad, and underfueling was mostly focused on females, menstrual cycles, and bone health. And then they started seeing that men also kind of have these symptoms of underfueling in their diets. And I think we also said that this might be a podcast on its own, because underfueling and relative energy deficiency is a big subject and there's many, many opinions. But I think you will know you're underfueling when your recovery is getting poorer, when your heart rate doesn't necessarily go back to where it was. Being irritated, feeling depressed, seeing that you used to have these gains as an athlete or in your training plan, and now suddenly nothing is happening. You're losing muscle, you're gaining fat. That's also, but then you're usually like quite far into underfueling as well. Changes in menstrual cycles, changes in testosterone levels, like decreased libido. And then obviously the longer term things would be then iron deficiency, anemia, and then bone health will go backwards. I think you will know. Your body definitely feels it when you're underfueling. And I think that constant irritation that you feel the whole time is probably a good sign.
So I think probably what we need to touch on there is that your coach will probably tell you that you're not performing as you should. That's maybe one thing. If you do have a coach, I think we've got monitors these days, either Oura Ring or a Garmin.
Yes.
If it triggers and it says, but your heart rate variability, your sleep is not good, as you say, that'll probably be your first things that come up, the little physiological changes.
Yes.
And then the big stuff like the iron, the magnesium, and libido and those type of things. So,
Yes.
and
But many of those also, you don't feel it. It's something that you actually need to test, because I'm just thinking we see a lot of endurance athletes in our clinic, and often the men, the testosterone is quite low, and it might be a combination of this either slash overtraining slash underfeeding type of cycle that they might be in.
But that's that's the thing with the red S is it is low energy availability, but it can also be signs of overtraining. So it kind of everything overlaps in the end. So if we're talking low energy availability, so we usually look at energy in, energy out, and if there's enough energy for your physiological body systems to continue. And just to get like an energy balance of 0, you need about 45 kilocalories per kilogram of fat-free mass. So your fat-free mass is obviously your metabolically active mass in your body. And then, and that's just to get a balance of 0. So for bone health to continue hormone expression, having enough glycogen in your muscles to actually train, feeling cognitively healthy, no depression, that's just to get, but we do go into cycles of low energy availability, but that's usually a short time period that we want you to go to do that. And that's for athletes that want to make weight, or someone in their base phase of training that do want to lose weight or lose some fat, do body composition changes. But you always want to get out of that low energy availability. But people tend to stay there for too long. And I always tell my athletes this: the longer you are in a lower energy availability, the lower your resting metabolic rate will become. And the more muscle you lose, the more difficult it is to actually put it back, especially as we age as well. So we always want to do a cycle of low energy availability is fine, but not for too long.
So that's actually a very important number to know your baseline.
Yes.
So you've mentioned the numbers. You obviously work it out on an in-body scan. You get the lean mass and then work out more or less on, I assume, on the in-body scan. Or what do you use to calculate that number?
Me, it depends on where the athletes are. So we will either use the Harris-Benedict equation or the Mifflin equation is for my less active individuals. And then sometimes I will use this energy balance and see. But we rarely want to go below 30 kilocalories per kilogram of your fat-free mass. But yeah, I use the lean body mass, and then I will just see where I am. Say the patient does want to lose weight, to see if we are ranging between that 30 to 45 kilocalories. But there's always, when, like in all research, right? This was done in a clinical setting where the patients were very controlled. In real life, it's always difficult to really get the numbers, because every day it's not the same for any person.
So my Garmin watch, actually, if I go into the app, it will tell me the calories that I, over time, and I can put it in there 4 weeks, 1 year, whatever, and I get a number.
Yes.
Is that usable in any way? Is it a guide? Do I need to go for a VO2 master to get metabolic rate? How do I, or,
Yeah.
I just, in general,
Yes.
I'm not talking about the top
No.
athlete.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the general recreational type of athlete, the guys that we see,
Yeah.
to get like a neutral balance on how much I should eat or not eat type of
I
thing.
think, you can use it as a baseline, definitely. But then I will also just compare that with an equation that has been standardized as well,
Yeah.
for sure. Sometimes when you get athletes that's scared to start eating while they're exercising, I will tell them, just go and look at your watch and see how much your watch is telling you you actually burned during those sessions. And then you can also kind of start convincing them to just eat something at least. And as soon as, especially females, start to eat something when they exercise and they see the difference and they feel the difference, then we can go from there. So sometimes I think it's more a psychological thing than, I think that the research on, is it very accurate? I don't think so.
But but I do think most people should get on an in-body at some point,
Oh, yeah.
because when I sit there with that page of the in-body, most people have got this, wow, is that me?
Yeah.
So, and
They're shocked.
yeah, they are shocked. And with that, a lot of people have got a lot more muscle than they thought, but also a lot more fat than they thought. So
Especially the ladies.
it's quite interesting
is.
how people see that, and other people think, no, I need to lose a lot, and then they are very close to their goal weight. So
Yes.
that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I like the in-body scan.
Yeah.
Especially, I think the power also lies within repeated scans to see what the trend is. So
That's
we
the thing.
try and standardize it a little bit to make sure that you do the in-body in the same conditions.
That's
Either
good.
if we measure in the morning next time, please come in the morning
And
again.
then exercise before.
Don't do anything different from the previous time. If you had something to eat the morning, then eat again. Or if you didn't have something to eat, don't eat again, and make sure you are hydrated and things like that. So
Yes.
we try and standardize it to get like the same picture over and over.
That's fantastic.
But,
Well done, guys.
But that was game changer in our practice. And,
Yes.
we're not dietitians.
No, it's fine. So in Canada, I worked at a clinic where we did do a bit of resting metabolic rate for our clients there, and they loved it, because then they feel like they know exactly what's going on in their bodies. And as you say, it should also be done very standardized. Make sure you don't exercise the day before, come in well rested, don't drink caffeine or any stimulating medications beforehand. And then the most important thing is to get them to relax, because as soon as you stress, your resting metabolic rate goes up. So I would usually repeat the test 2 or 3 times and then finally get like a number in between, because the more you breathe, the higher your resting metabolic
and that
rate
would be
is.
the most sensitive way of doing it. Actually doing the
Exactly.
breathing test to
Yeah.
calculate your rate.
But it is stressful having that thing on your face and the dietitian staring at you. You're like, oh my goodness, what is she thinking? So
More difficult to get them not to drink coffee in the morning.
yeah, I think for most Canadians, definitely it was. But
Yeah,
it was
so
very interesting.
Yeah, so
I
we use the
enjoyed
VO2 master to determine that, and
Yes.
we don't do it that often, but I mean it's available. We can use it, and we've used it
Yeah.
a couple of times
Yeah.
in certain cases.
Yeah, if you really want just book. And Hannes, that's been on the podcast a few times, he will be the person administering the test.
Okay.
But we usually do it, and then we refer to you guys to say,
Yeah.
listen, this is the data. Please, can you take it
Well,
further?
that's good. That's good. Then we can usually find a middle ground. And it's also good for clients to see, oh, okay, so when I just do nothing, this is actually what I need. But if I start training, I will need more calories on top of that. I need additional calories for my food to actually digest in my body. You know, your normal activities of daily living also builds upon your resting metabolic rate. And people tend to forget that. They feel like having 1,200 calories a day will be sufficient. But I mean, that's what a 4-year-old needs. So
By the sound of it all, what I'm picking up is that most people underfuel.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
And
feeling that I get.
underfuel with the wrong stuff. So maybe let's step onto that, because you get bombarded by
A lot.
120 carbs. We see flash, 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 but then we get the protein as well. Like the big thing these days, you have to have 1 to 2 grams of a protein per kilogram of muscle mass per day. How much? And that's maybe the next question. What do you think so in training, yes or no? And how much? What is the new thinking in the academic circles?
Okay.
A big one.
You know,
Maybe we need another podcast on that one.
everything in sports nutrition is always so interesting because every group always has a different opinion, obviously, on things.
But diet is like religion.
Yes,
I mean,
it
it's
is.
normal.
Yeah, no, it is normal. And people tend to follow people these days, influencers. I mean, fantastic. And yeah, so obviously, where it all started is you want to see how much protein you need to create muscle protein synthesis in the body after resistance training or after training. So they started at 20 to 25 grams of protein per feed when you eat. So, and then having it in regular meals throughout the day. Then they added upon that and they made it 40 grams of protein per meal. So that's usually for the masters athletes, because as we age, obviously the mTOR cycle goes down. We become less superhuman-y as when you are before 35. It feels like after 35, everything goes down.
We've got a saying or something like you're pretty much indestructible until 35.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing with our tests.
Yeah, like
35 is the
downhill.
I know, it's crazy.
yeah,
and
yeah.
then as you age, by the time you're 50, your muscle protein loss is almost triple than when it was just after 35. So
that's the first pill. There is no standard. It depends where you are in that
that's the
spectrum.
thing.
If you're 50, you need, or I'm assuming you need more than when you're 35, or but you need a different amount because you
Yes.
make muscle different.
Yes. So that's where the 40 grams come in. And then also getting in about 3 grams of leucine per protein feed. But that you will get in with like 20 to 25 grams of quality protein usually. And that also obviously helps to stimulate the muscle protein synthesis.
And that's per feed.
Per feed, yes. But so it depends also on where you are in your training cycle, right? So if you are in your base training, you don't necessarily need as much protein per day as when you are in a building phase. So anywhere between 1.2 to 1.6 gram of your actual body mass is usually sufficient. When you talk about fat-free mass, that's when you go up to the 2 to 2.4. But when you usually work it back, it goes back down to that 1.2 to 1.6.
And I also assume it depends on the type of sport, because if you're talking about endurance type of sport, cycling, running, whatever, then it's more about maintaining muscle, not losing muscle, whereas some of the other sports you want to actually increase muscle. So
But the thing is also with endurance sport, people tend to underfuel. So then you also need a bit more protein to actually keep that muscle mass, because your endurance athletes want to weigh less than your muscle building. So they are also mostly the people that goes into the low energy availability that falls into that group. And then also as we age, obviously, we need to the older we get, we need a bit more protein. But I just read this thing that said resistance training is actually what you need more than the amount of protein that you need, because the resistance training is what makes your body, what wakes up the muscle again to actually build the muscle again. But yes, definitely between 1.2 to 1.6 of your actual body mass.
And that's quite difficult to get to. I mean, to eat that amount, if you think about it, an egg, it's got somewhere between
7
6
grams,
and 8, 6 and 8 grams. So you need almost 10 eggs.
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
And I mean, like a 200-gram steak is not 200 grams of protein. I think people need to understand that as well. So
200 grams of steak will be around like, well, you just divide it by 3. But
so 80.
So
that's good to know. I didn't know that actually. So you divide it by 3 and then you'll know. Like a 300-gram steak will give you about 100 grams of protein.
700 grams of steak will give you 100 grams of protein. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, divided by 7.
By
sorry.
7.
Yeah, so 0.25 grams, so 25 grams of protein will be in about 150 grams of meat.
So it's, I mean, I think about my diet and it's almost impossible to get there. You have to really focus.
I mean, we both above 50, so
and
we need to be on the higher.
If you're a guy, you weigh more. So then obviously, if you weigh like 100 kilograms or whatever, and we want about 1.6 grams per kilo, that's a lot it's almost 160 grams per day. But then also there's protein in milk, there's protein in your carbs. So that all kind of subtracts from your meat portions as well. And a lot of people use whey protein as well.
I agree with that. And I think we need, I mentioned steak, but I don't mean protein just in animal source or just in meat source. We talk about protein in
in your dairy,
form.
But people tend to forget that there is protein in carbohydrates. There's about 3 grams of protein in a serving of carbohydrates. So we forget that. So when we calculate your diet, we actually subtract your protein from your vegetables and from your milk and from your carbohydrates from your total daily protein needs. And that all comes together. So usually, most guys will need about between 9 to 15, 16 servings of protein per day, which is a lot.
Yeah, that's proper. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. So that's why I like to put in a little bit of whey protein here and there, which makes up about 3 of your protein exchanges in a day, which helps.
Do you ever use essential amino acids instead of whey?
No. So the research always goes back to try to eat whole foods because it contains all the amino acids that you need. But obviously adding creatine into the mix isn't the worst thing.
Okay. You brought one of my questions up. Okay, but I think we realized protein is maybe another podcast that we can do, protein in itself. But you mentioned creatine. So, I mean, that's another big flashpoint, how much, all that. But I think we all agree now that creatine is a supplement that most people should take.
Amazing supplement. It's one of the supplements the IOC also feels like it's one of the biggest supplements, and it's not on the WADA list, so you can use it without being scared that you will be doping on anything. So that's also great.
We've done a podcast on creatine, so just a refresher. So it's a supplement. The body gets it from whole food sources,
like meat and chicken and seafood.
Yeah, and obviously, if we say everyone should take it, most people are not getting enough.
Yes. Well, and that also comes back to underfueling again, right? Or if you're on a vegetarian or a vegan diet, you're not going to get the additional creatine you need. Your body does make about, I think, 1 to 2 grams per day, but you do need to supplement. And the creatine your body does make is slower than just, ingesting additional creatine. But just something interesting that I read is like 1 kilogram of meat contains 5 grams of creatine.
Yeah.
It's insane. but no one's going to eat a kilogram of meat.
No.
I think some guys would be like, yay, I'll get it that way. But then we'll sit with cholesterol issues and other issues in the end. So, yeah. I don't know what you said about creatine on your previous podcast.
No, but I mean, it's the short-term energy
Yeah.
source. So the 1 to 10 seconds, or maybe a little bit longer. As we described it, is starting to make a fire. You need a match. You need a bit of kindling, and then you need big logs.
Yes.
So the striking of the match is the creatine.
Yes.
And then the kindling is carbs, and then the slow burn is your free fatty acids.
Yes.
So with creatine, it's obviously not just a muscle thing, it's a brain thing. So
Yeah.
It's all about the
So
energy, the
interesting,
availability
yeah.
of energy and the recycling of your ATP. And that's why it's also so good for the brain, because it's high energy demand.
Yeah, the brain has a high creatine
But
energy
obviously you
demand.
need more to
Yeah.
get that level saturated.
Yeah, so that's why I think also in the older population, or as we age, getting in additional creatine is very good, because as we age, we also don't necessarily eat enough protein. If you look at older people's diets as well, there's not necessarily financial aid or enough money to buy good quality meat products. So a lot of times people won't be eating enough. And then also your athletes that's just not eating enough, full stop. So they will also need the additional creatine because they won't be getting enough from their daily nutritional intake. So in older adults, they found that creatine and resistance training can actually build up to 1.4 kilograms of lean mass in 2 years' time, which I think in the older population, that's amazing. Yes, so that will be muscle and then a little bit of bone mass, which is fantastic. And as you said, you do need creatine, obviously, to exercise. And we always think that it's mostly for the short or the shorter exercises, but there is some benefits for the endurance athletes as well, which is good. And then, as you said, it's a buffering for hydrogen ions, and it facilitates glycogen resynthesis. So obviously, you always want to go into a match or into a race or into a stage race well carbo loaded. I'm a very big fan of carbo loading. We can someday have a podcast on that as well.
Carbo loading on its own.
Yes, but they have found that the creatine with the with enough glycogen in your muscles actually gives you a little bit of an enhancement in energy use while you are training. So there is definitely a beneficial role in endurance performance, especially like when you have to do breakaways, or you at the end of that swim in the Ironman and you just need to kick a little bit harder. So there's definitely, when you do train with it and you supplement with it every day, there's definitely a space for that. And
yes,
then,
that insulin sensitivity that
Yes.
improves with the creatine. That's why we'll also use it in our pre-diabetics as well, to give
Yeah.
them a little bit of support from that side as well.
Yeah, but then one of the questions is always, will creatine lead to kidney disease? No, it won't. It's when you have kidney disease, do not use it. But it will not create kidney disease. The same with a high protein diet. It won't lead to any kidney failure. It's just a myth. And then I don't know if you spoke about loading phases and what you need daily, but just to recap again, if you want to load, it's 20 grams a day for 5 days, and after that 3 to 5 grams a day. But then there's the water retention and the bloating, and I'm gaining weight. It's not fat, it's just water. And if you do want to miss the bloating, just start on a base phase and continue with that daily, like 3 to 5 grams per day. Around exercise, during exercise, after exercise, rest days, just continue using
So with
it.
our female patients as well, because you might on the scale you see a little bit of increase in your weight, but which is nice because you've got more intracellular
Water,
fluid. So if
yes.
you do the in-body, it actually looks better, even though your in-body scan, the number, the total
Yeah.
number is better, because you've actually, it seems more
Exactly.
lean mass
And it actually, creatine helps with fat burning. So, I mean, use it.
I think it is the most amazing supplement for a few reasons. I mean, it's really cheap. I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
if you a whole family can go a whole month on 200 rands
bag,
worth
yeah.
Yeah, it's
of
like 5 grams says is 1 kilogram of steak. So
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
it is cheap. It's very easy to make. So most brands are good. So most of them that you can actually buy. So I mean, people always say, but what magnesium must I take? What vitamin? But with creatine, it's actually very easy.
Just
So
buy.
most creatine monohydrates are
It's
actually
the
good because
same.
it's
Yeah.
such an easy molecule to make. And and yeah, like I say, it's got this whole range of
Yeah, with cognitive health,
Yeah.
like that, and post brain injuries. It's amazing.
And the two things we want to keep as we get older, brain and muscle, it's good for both. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I'm a big fan of creatine. I prescribe it to all my athletes. I started giving it to my dad, and he also said he felt so much better after he started using it, like more clear every day. So he brings it with when he comes to visit. So, yeah, no, it's a great supplement, and they have been studying it for 60 plus years. So, I mean, you can really take it as a good quality supplement for, I think, all your athletes, your non-athletes, your older adults. I think it's amazing. And it's safe to use in kids as well. Although I don't like using supplements in younger kids, but the boys in high school, they do want to use a little bit of a supplement.
something.
Yes. So then I will say, okay, well, let's try a little bit of creatine after 16 and see how it's going.
Well,
But it
I
is
always
safe.
pre-exam that 4 to 6 weeks pre-exam, my kids go on to creatine
Yeah.
until after the exams, and I'll give them a break for whatever.
Brain health.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get them through the exams.
I'm gonna do the same when my kids reach. Yeah, so it's interesting. I love creatine. It's amazing.
Good. Haven't touched on iron, but iron we've done 2 good
Yeah,
podcasts on, so we
amazing
won't go to
ones.
iron, but that then brings us to magnesium.
Hmm.
Magnesium is one of those that is difficult to gain, and that's why there's no major clear cut. We know it works, but who needs it? How much? Which one?
And the standard blood test for magnesium is, might as well leave it out.
basically
It's like
useless.
useless.
So yeah, if someone takes your blood test and tell you you've got a low magnesium, then you're very, very far down the road, because it's the stores of magnesium are everywhere, and if you take the blood, it doesn't really tell you too much. So I think we all
Exactly.
agree on that one. So we open up the box of
Magnesium.
you stand in the pharmacy and you see this magnesium glycinate, magnesium threonate, magnesium citrate, magnesium carbonate, magnesium. So where do we start? What, do we need it? Which one do we need? When do you take it? So that's...
Yeah, I think that's a question for the doctors.
Okay, let's start.
No,
I
I'm
know which
joking.
one I take.
I know. So, obviously, it's a very essential mineral for athletic performance and obviously for your muscles, because a lot of your ATP, the energy in your muscles, comes with magnesium. When do athletes have increased requirements? It's obviously when they train harder. Usually when they are training and competing in higher heat. So the warmer it is, there is some evidence that states that you do lose a bit more magnesium.
In sweat, you mean? Or
in sweat and in urine.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you aren't deficient, it shouldn't affect you that much, because we do all take electrolytes while we are training. So, and then obviously when you struggle to sleep, or when you feel a bit irritated, and then also get muscle cramps when you're not exercising, that's usually a good indicator that you do need magnesium.
So that's quite an interesting... It's actually because you need calcium to pull the muscle. So
Yes.
it makes your muscle pull, but you need magnesium to let it go.
Yes.
So that's why you get the cramp,
Yeah,
because if there's not enough, you can't let go, and then
Yeah.
you get the cramp. So that's quite interesting. Maybe just to touch on that. So the glycinate and the threonate is then the sleepy one,
Yeah.
and pretty much all the others are the awake ones. So
Yes.
if you think about it that way, so I think if
Yeah.
you're out there and you stand in front of that
Yes.
shelf, so if you see glycinate and you see threonate's really, really expensive in South Africa. So
Yeah.
most people do not supplement with that one because it's like over R1,000 for like a bottle of.
Yeah,
So
it's
so
expensive.
so glycinate is what most people take.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Because it
magnesium
helps you sleep.
citrate.
So citrate is the one that lifts you a little
Yes,
bit.
but it does irritate your gut. So a lot
Okay.
of people use that to
And
go.
and then there's malleate.
Yeah.
Apparently there's a little bit of malleate that works well with exercise. I'm not 100% sure about the mechanism, but
Yeah.
malleate is also
Yeah.
But again, almost like carbohydrates, if you take too much, it irritates your gut quite quickly.
Yeah, especially the magnesium citrate does. And it's all about the bioavailability of the supplement. So the glycinate is very bioavailable and it doesn't irritate the gut as much as well. But I feel as a dietitian, I always feel a food first approach is very important. And if you have enough magnesium in your diet, you should be fine. And
And maybe then tell us, where do you get
Yes.
it? Which ones, where?
on my way there.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So foods that's very high in magnesium is obviously bananas is one of those things. Cashews, almonds, hazelnuts, your green leafy vegetables like spinach and Swiss chard, your whole grains like rice and pasta and wholemeal, like that stuff that we all eat as athletes, I think a lot. And then seafood also contains quite a bit of magnesium. And then legumes like lentils, red beans, and chickpeas, which is great for other reasons as well. They're very high in fiber, so it's very good for insulin resistance and then also dark chocolate.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah. I thought most people
That
would.
one is a,
Yeah, so those are, I think, if you follow a healthy, balanced diet, you should be able to get ample amounts of magnesium.
but it sounds like low carb people will probably need some.
Yes, probably. And then also if you are underfueling, and they have found, I found a few studies. Let me just go back. Some of the athletes that they actually found low magnesium levels in, I think, was rugby players and gymnasts, but then also in cyclists, volleyball players, triathletes, physically active men and women, recreational runners, marathon runners. They did not find many magnesium deficiencies in them, but also they didn't do like any baseline. It's just data from a randomized control trial that I read. So it was interesting. Like, I think we always have to go back to, what are you eating? Are you eating enough? Are you eating a variety of foods? And then where are you in your training cycle? Do you have any of the symptoms, cramping, feeling depressed, cognitive issues? Are you on any diuretics or proton pumps inhibitors? Because that also obviously hinders magnesium uptake.
That hinders a lot of uptake of a lot of other nutrients as well. So it's an important point to take.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that we're missing in this is the triad of calcium, magnesium, VD.
Yes.
So VD is then our next. So that is something that we need to maybe stop on, because we're gonna maybe not stop if we don't stop at VD.
I know. So, and as you know, vitamin D and magnesium work together. So vitamin D helps at magnesium absorption, and then magnesium is then essential for vitamin D synthesis and transport in the body. So if you have a deficiency in one, and it can mask each other with your parathyroid hormone as well.
So before you go further, just for us in our InnerSight 1 testing, the first few years, we almost did not find someone that had a normal vitamin D level.
I can imagine.
In South Africa.
Yeah, 1 in
Almost-
3 people have vitamin D deficiency.
Almost everyone was under
Well,
21.
I'll tell you, our stats is higher than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Definitely
eh?
higher than that. So just for the people out there, vitamin D can be tested in the blood. It's actually quite a
Please do taste it.
yeah.
If you're
And
an athlete,
under 21 is deficient, and over 100
Is toxic.
is toxic. So we try and run our people between 40 and 50. So
okay, that's a good
which
one.
is mid-range, but
I mean,
almost
it's good
everyone was
enough.
under 21.
Yes.
It was hectic.
Yeah, and everything with the vitamin D, like, is it good for muscle function and illness, or is there a threshold, or is it good for recovery and muscle repair? Everything in the literature goes back to, is your athlete at a normal vitamin D level? Because they only saw strength go up in adults that was actually deficient beforehand. But in your vitamin D replete athletes, there was no change in their muscle strength. So everything with vitamin D in any athlete, especially in wintertime, obviously, we all don't train as much outside, especially in Cape Town, because it's raining all the time and the sun isn't shining, and we don't go out with bare backs or bare arms or bare legs. And people also tend to forget that the sun actually needs to touch your skin for you to make vitamin D. But we all go out with hats. Please wear a hat and sunscreen, but with hats and long sleeves and long pants, and we never really get sun exposure on the parts of our bodies that need sun exposure to make our own natural vitamin D. In our country, we shouldn't be suffering from vitamin D. But then also with your darker skinned athletes, obviously they have less, I think, melanin in their
More
melanin.
more
So
melanin.
So it's
their
more
vitamin
difficult
D,
for
yeah,
them,
it's
yeah.
more difficult for them to synthesize vitamin D. But everything in the literature goes back to test your vitamin D, make sure it's at a replete level. But it's very good for immunity, definitely. Especially during winter times, take a bit more vitamin D for sure. Yeah, but I always test iron and vitamin D and vitamin B12 in my athletes, just to make sure we are starting the journey off right.
And I think that's critical. So with our iron, we talked about athletes should have a ferritin of 100 plus. We believe that. So
That's amazing.
And-
I don't think I've ever been there in my life.
yeah, then you need to come to us.
Yeah.
We'll give it through the vein. But and then vitamin D level of 40. But if you deficient, to get you to a level of 40,
It's massive
you need
amounts.
to take around 4,000 to 5,000 international units per day for
Yeah.
months
Yeah.
to get up there. It really does take a lot
And then
of
it
time.
also depends on your genetic makeup, because some people it's just they don't absorb it as well. They don't convert
Yeah.
it as well, depending on if they've got a little snippet somewhere.
Exactly. And then also, obviously, when you live in the northern hemispheres, that's also a place where you definitely need to make sure you're getting in enough vitamin D during the winter months as well. They say if your shadow is longer than you are not making vitamin D. So
And in Canada, did they
Yes.
push that quite a lot?
yes, so seasonal affective disorder was a big thing over there. It's like the you get really sad, so they would call it sad no more. So we would taste
Sad
vitamin
no
D
more.
and make sure you are sad no more.
In South Africa, you get it after a week.
Yes. So I will also always tell my clients, just go once a week, because fair-skinned people don't necessarily need hours of sun. We need like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes of full sun exposure, and you are taking up enough vitamin D. So once a week, go out with your pants and your exercise top and get some sun on your skin, come back, and great. And you also need the cholesterol and the sweat on your skin also to absorb the vitamin D. So
Almost like just a good diet, just a good sun exposure is still the best vitamin D out there.
and
So
it makes you feel good.
yeah.
Mm.
Makes you sad no more.
Sad no more.
Yeah, but that in Canada and also obviously in the Northern Hemisphere, we would usually double vitamin D supplementation for clients. We would just start everyone on vitamin D because there is no sun for such a long time in the year. So with the climate outside and getting no sun, you do start to feel the effects like emotionally, depression and stuff like that.
So for our South Africans, just a caveat there is to look for vitamin D3. There's still a
Yeah.
lot of old vitamin D2
Yes.
supplementation, which is really badly absorbed. So if you see the calciferol D2 supplements, and especially the older people are on that script still
Oh, yes.
for months and months, and it's not the right thing. They need to be switched to a D3.
for sure.
But I also think is that ideally you would like to know your number.
Yeah.
Okay. But during winter, it's probably fine taking 1,000, maybe 2,000
Yeah,
international units a
yes.
day. It should probably not go too high on that.
Yeah, it's usually 400 international units, but I think for winter you can definitely.
But
And also in periods of when you're dieting or when you're on low energy availability, that's also a very good time to definitely test and also supplement with vitamin D.
I've actually only seen one person being toxic.
Really?
Only one.
I can imagine because
And we tested a lot. So, and that was someone that was supplementing a lot, but
yeah.
I've only seen
to the
one
other
being
side.
toxic in my life. So,
Oh, wow.
I would rather say take too much and then test, but not take. It is one of those things that really do change people's lives. And I agree with you. If you get those two things, iron and vitamin D right, then you get a lot right in the energy systems
For
in the body.
sure.
And if you add creatine to that, that's actually cheap and cheerful things to make your life a lot better.
And fuel while you are exercising. And I wanted to go back to the low energy availability. They actually found that like low carbohydrate intake, even though you are eating enough, actually does also lead to low energy availability and low bone health and hormonal health. So it's also interesting with, especially I think in females where everyone is scared to eat carbohydrates, is to eat carbohydrates. It makes you feel good, number one. It fuels you to do for the task at hand. And then also it's good for your bones. It's great.
yeah.
Helanie, before we finish up, is there anything we did not touch on? Is there something that's out there that's new that we haven't talked about? Is it, I mean, where do people get more information? Is there anything else that you want to touch on?
Well, for me, it's just to make sure you're eating enough, fueling for the task at hand, and then supplement with the correct things. And more isn't always better. Rather go and find out from someone who knows if you do want to start on a supplement or use a whey protein or anything. Just, make sure. Oh, in the older population, I keep forgetting things. Sorry. I tend to jump around. Casein feeds before bedtime is very good for muscle protein synthesis in the older populations, up to 40 gram serving, because casein breaks down much slower than whey. So while you sleep, you are generating muscle. So
and that you get in milk, or where would
in
they
milk,
get that?
or you can just buy a casein dominant protein supplement.
Okay.
But milk, yes. That's where you get it.
So I can have my hot chocolate at night.
You can.
Awesome.
You will, if you ask Rudy, there's always some kind of yogurt or milk drink before you go to bed if I'm your dietitian.
So talk about the dietitian. When are we going to see you on the Ironman again?
So now that everything's fine with me, hopefully next year, and then the year after that, I plan to do the full Ironman for sure.
And use your own diet advice.
That's why I actually did my sports nutrition diploma, is when I started training for my first Ironman. I was like, something is definitely missing. So, and then I started with the diploma, and it changed my life. So, and
that's our story as well. That's how we started out with InnerSight, it's like fixing our own issues.
Yes. It's weird how things happen.
Thanks for your time.
It's a pleasure. Do you
Brilliant.
guys have any more questions?
No,
Yeah,
that's-
we'll definitely need to do another
Yeah,
podcast and
yeah.
then break this down a little bit in smaller pieces because there's
Okay.
just too much in it. I
And
mean,
It is
maybe
a
we'll
lot.
ask our audience to maybe
Yeah.
give comments
Specific.
so that we know where, because I mean, we live in this world every day, but
Yeah.
maybe hearing something and like, but what did you say there? How does that
Yeah.
work? Maybe we can touch on that
For
a little
sure.
bit later the year again.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Disclaimer. This podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of your healthcare provider. No doctor-patient relationship has been formed through this podcast. The content here is for information purposes only.